Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates, and welcome to our side event convened by the International Seabed Authority with the support of our partners from Singapore, France, Tonga, Norway, India, Senegal, the Cook Islands, and Canada, and also with the support of the OECD, the UN Global Compact, and the UN Office of Legal Affairs and IFRIMA. It is a real pleasure to see you here today to spend some time discussing this important report that was issued recently by the ISA on our contribution to the achievement of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Ladies and gentlemen, these side events are always under extreme pressure, so some rules of the game. You will see some panelists here. They will make their presentations, and then I will invite them to leave the podium and replace them with the second round of panelists. That way we can fit everybody onto the podium with sufficient space to be comfortable. Today's event provides us with an opportunity to highlight some of the work being done by the international community to establish strong partnerships to support sustainable management of the deep seabed and its resources, and how those can contribute to achieving the 2030 Agenda. The context for this event is the report that I just mentioned, which was an independent report, found that through implementing its mandate under the Law of the Sea Convention and progressing the voluntary commitments registered at the 2017 UN Ocean Conference, ISA contributes in a meaningful way to 12 out of the 17 SDGs. So today's discussion will unpack some of these findings, as well as touch on some of the issues that will be discussed in interactive dialogues 6, 7, and 8 during this conference. As we know, the deep seabed and its resources are designated by the Convention as the common heritage of mankind. It is the only example that we have of a global commons that is set aside to be managed internationally for the common good. The scientific research that is being undertaken in the deep seabed will help us to better understand our planet and further make a sustainable future. The rich mineral deposits found on the seafloor and the biodiversity associated with them also create exciting opportunities for sustainable development. It is no exaggeration to say that how well collectively we manage this space and its resources is a tremendous test for multilateralism in the coming years. Fortunately, we have a platform for doing that. That platform is the International Seabed Authority, which was created with the mandate to provide that neutral space for collective deliberation and making trade-offs over the common heritage by joint decision-making based on consensus. It's very easy to forget the context within which UNCLOS was created. There was a real threat in the 1970s and 80s of unilateral claims to deep seabed resources, which could easily have led to unrestrained exploitation and appropriation of the resources for a benefit of only a few. There would be no benefit to developing countries in terms of access to resources, scientific knowledge, technology, and no common environmental standards. These were the factors that led visionaries like Arvid Pardo and others to call on the United Nations to set aside the deep seabed as a space to be shared between all nations and to establish an international machinery to manage that space before any activity could take place. The mandates of the authority are very clear. The authority must regulate all mineral-related activities, and in doing so apply the highest possible environmental standards, using the best scientific evidence to create global standards which will form a benchmark for the rest of the world. The authority must promote marine scientific research of the deep seabed and make sure that the results of that research are available to everyone. And the authority must ensure full and effective participation by developing states in the activities carried out in the deep seabed. Before giving the floor to the first speaker, I wish to take this opportunity to acknowledge and thank the group of 10 internationally renowned experts who gave freely of their time and expertise to help us prepare the report. It was a great pleasure working with such a distinguished group, and I thank each and every one of them for their contribution. The report, which I stress was prepared completely independently of the Secretariat, was the product of very wide stakeholder consultation, and I wish to thank all those who accepted to be interviewed for the report. We deliberately made sure that the interviewees would reflect as many perspectives as possible and that their views would be taken into account. I was impressed by the fact that although they had different views on many issues, all interviewees shared a strong sense of commitment to the underlying mission of the authority. Of course, there is much work ahead of us. UNCLOS and the institutions established by it face significant challenges. They need the continued support and commitment of member states as they implement the mandates that have been conferred on them by international law. And I hope that today's event will demonstrate how that sense of commitment is being manifested in relation to the work of the authority. Without any further ado, I will pass over to the first speaker this morning. It is really an honor to present Ms. Rena Lee of Singapore, well known to everybody and I think needs no introduction, wearing today two hats, or maybe three hats, but certainly her hats as the president of the BBNJ conference, but also a member of the ISA Legal and Technical Commission for the past 5 years. Rena, thank you very much, and you have the floor.
Thank you very much to the Secretary General of the Authority. Good afternoon, everyone. Gives me great pleasure to be here today, and of course, Singapore is pleased to be partnering the Authority as well as our various partners to host this side event. Now, today's side event has 3 thematic panels covering the strengthening of the rule of law, advancing deep sea research and science, and fostering strategic partnerships. And these themes actually illustrate the work of the authority in discharging its mandate, and in the title of the side event, its mandate in the stewardship of seabed mineral resources, as well as the protection of the marine environment. But not only that, I mean, in the past few days, we've heard many people weigh in on the importance of protecting the ocean. And so these themes also speak to the many discussions that we've heard over the past few days here at the Ocean Conference. It's been, as the Secretary General mentioned, my privilege to be a member of the Legal and Technical Commission of the authority. It's a subsidiary body of the Council, and it comprises a variety of technical experts, including biologists, geologists, and lawyers. The output of the LTC reflects the perspectives of the different kinds of expertise that reside within the Commission. And in some ways, I think how the LTC works may be said to be a microcosm or reflective of how the authority works as a whole. When we speak of the rule of law, the focus rightly is on accountability and compliance by everyone of laws, rules, regulations that have been transparently adopted and apply equally. But lawmaking that is open, that is transparent, that is grounded in clear principles is an important contribution to the strengthening of the rule of law. As you know, right now, the Council of the Authority, which is the executive organ of the Authority, is focused on developing the regulatory framework for exploitation of mineral resources. The participative nature of various rounds of stakeholder consultations that have allowed the different stakeholders to participate and weigh in including member states, civil society, the scientific community, contractors, individuals, to weigh in, to comment on the regulatory framework, to share their insights into how to build the regulations, is an important feature of the transparent way in which we're developing the regulatory framework. And Singapore has been a member of the Council since 2015, and we look forward to continuing our active participation in the Council as we seek re-election in the upcoming term. Now, the work of the Council highlights multilateralism at work, where stakeholders from all walks of life can come together to take action. And we've heard many in the last few days speak about the need for urgent action. And it makes multilateralism and collective decision-making, what the Secretary General also alluded to, that collective decision-making more crucial in order for us to be able to achieve that urgent action. And multilateralism and collective decision-making needs to be backed by solid science, to enable the policymakers to make robust decisions which are driven by science. So the scientific work that is championed by the authority is an important element of fulfilling the authority's mandate as well. And in this respect, the partnerships that we will hear about are also crucial to be able to pool resources, to pool the talents together to achieve better outcomes. So I look forward to hearing the insights from the three panels today, and for us to be able to learn from the experienced experts that will address us in the three panels, and I wish every one of us a very good session. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I thank the Ambassador for Oceans and Law of the Sea Issues of Singapore, Ms. Rina Lee. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce Monsieur Olivier Poivre-d'Arvor, the Special Envoy for the Poles and the Ocean of France. Monsieur Poivre-d'Arvor, vous avez la parole.
Merci. Thank you so much, Secretary General, dear Michael. Thank you for inviting us to this event on a quite much discussed topic. Seabed is one of the fascinating parts of the universe which inspired a long time ago, a century, Jules Verne and his novel 20,000 Leagues Under the Seas. But speaking about seabed, let me rather quote Mr. Macron, our president, who said last October, I quote, "Who can accept that we live in the most complete unknown, a part of so important in the world? It's an extraordinary lever for understanding the living." He wasn't presenting our national strategy for funding innovation towards year 2030. And the decision was taken to allocate funds to deep seabed in order to better understand the living on our planet. Thus, in France, a budget of around 300 million euros is earmarked for investment in the field of the deep seabed. Our objective is twofold. First of all, to create, or let's say consolidate, a French industrial base capable to act in this field by supplying equipment, systems or services or of expertise or of exploration. Then, allow to acquire a significant mass of knowledge to understand this environment very largely unknown at the present time. Carry out a precise cartography, make an inventory what is found there, living species, mineral resource, etc. Understand how of these very special ecosystems and their sensitivity to human action, whether the latter is general or localized. It is thus a question of multiplying our capacity of exploration, in particular thanks to the use of innovative systems with high autonomy. This ambition of France 2030 is governed by a ministerial steering committee. With the approval of the Interministerial Committee for the Sea, chaired by the Prime Minister and the Secretary General de la Mer, who is in this room, it was decided to launch 4 missions to explore seabeds. One of precision multi-factor mapping, a second one using a deep sea glider to monitor an underwater volcano, another one for developing deep sea unmanned vehicle for scientific exploration, and the last one to innovate in depth underwater robots. France distinguished very clearly between exploration and the potential exploitation phase. The national strategy for the deep seabed also makes exploration a priority in order to improve knowledge and scientific data on environments and resources that are still largely unknown, both in our exclusive economic zone and in the zone. It is only with regard to the knowledge accumulated during this exploration phase that it will be possible to determine whether a potential exploitation of mineral resources is possible and to set the condition, or, on the contrary, that the moving to an exploitation phase will be too harmful for these ecosystems. Exploration is therefore far from being limited to a prospective phase and does not imply automatic passage to the exploitation phase, which can only be effectively considered, among other things, if a well-defined regularity and environmental framework is put in place. So we are ready, as French, to play our part in multilateral cooperation to ensure that seabed resources remain safely stewarded, as this event's title suggests. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you very much for your statement. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce the UN Legal Counsel, Mr. Miguel de Cepa Soares, who I know is rushing between many events. Thank you very much, Miguel, for joining us just in time. You have the floor.
Thank you, Michael. Yes, I'm rushing between different events with a lot of pleasure that I have to do it. And this is so far a great week for oceans. So, Excellencies, but first and foremost, friends of the ocean, and I see some familiar faces, very happy to see you here. At the outset, I should note that we cannot speak of ocean stewardship without first recognizing the preeminent role of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea in that regard. Now, the convention, which celebrates its 40th anniversary this year, sets out the legal framework within which all activities in the oceans and seas must be carried out. It enjoys widespread acceptance, 168 states parties, and continues to be celebrated as the result of the steadfast resolve of the international community to overcome differences in a spirit of multilateralism. The Convention is the backbone in our quest for sustainable development and the achievements of Sustainable Development Goal 14. And its provisions embody the 3 dimensions of sustainable development: economic, social, environmental. These are markedly reflected in Part 11 of the Convention and its 1994 implementing agreement. And the General Assembly of the United Nations, which provides the global cross-sectoral stewardship that the ocean requires, has repeatedly reaffirmed the importance of the work of the authority, in particular, the ongoing elaboration and standardization of rules, regulations, and procedures to ensure an effective protection of the marine environment. The authority, as the organization through which states parties organize and control activities in the area, bears a fundamental responsibility in implementing the common heritage of humankind and ensuring that such activities support the achievement of the relevant goals of the 2030 Agenda. Now, in these brief remarks, I wish to highlight a number of points that I see as key to ensuring an effective stewardship of the area. First, we must ensure that activities in the area serve the overall interest and development of all countries, especially developing states. Now, to this end, the importance of the transfer of marine technology in accordance with international law cannot be overstated. An equitable mechanism for the sharing of financial and other benefits must be devised. We must also take into account the legitimate concerns of land-based producers that may be affected. Second, and needless to say, because here I take the risk of preaching to a converted audience, we must strike a balance between the exploration and exploitation of resources and the protection and preservation of the marine environment. Third, we must base our efforts on science, including by strengthening the science policy interface and applying a precautionary approach where needed. And in this respect, we must harness the opportunities provided by the United Nations Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development and also the World Ocean Assessments. Fourth, we must continue to strengthen cooperation and coordination across sectors and stakeholders. This is critical for the safe and orderly conduct of activities in the ocean and to address any cumulative impacts. Now, I wish to note in this regard the role of United Nations Oceans and invite you all to attend the UN Oceans high-level event to take place this afternoon from 4 p.m. to 5:15 p.m. And this will take place inside event room 1. Sorry for the publicity. And last but not least, we must ensure an inclusive and transparent stewardship. And I think this is a fundamental point. So on that account, initiatives that aim to build the capacity of all countries to take part in the regime set out in the Convention are essential. I also applaud all initiatives that recognize and promote women's equal participation and leadership. So I wish you fruitful exchanges at this event, and I can assure you of my officers and my personal continued support for ensuring the stewardship of ocean sustainability and the Convention, including in the area. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Miguel, and I certainly look forward to see you later this afternoon at the UN Oceans side event. Colleagues, it's now my great pleasure to introduce for the second time today Her Excellency Fikita Otoika-Manu, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Tourism of Tonga.
Thank you, Secretary General, and thank you for giving me the floor. And at the outset, allow me to also thank you for inviting me to speak at this event on this important issue of strengthening the rule of law on the ocean, which will ensure the sustainable management of the area and its resources for the benefit of humankind. Target 16.3 of the 2030 Agenda emphasizes the need to promote the rule of law at national and international levels. The rule of law denotes two things. Firstly, the supremacy of the law, and secondly, the equality before the law. And this is important in the ocean sphere given the many interests, activities, and resources to be managed for current and future generations. The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, as the constitution of oceans, has played a fundamental role in ensuring the peaceful use and the sustainable management of the ocean. And this is particularly true when it comes to the area and the work of the International Seabed Authority in implementing Part 11 of the Convention of the Law of the Sea. While the law exists, it must be strengthened. Strengthening the rule of law comes from ensuring that it evolves to address contemporary issues, addresses gaps in the existing legal frameworks, and ensures inclusivity of all countries, including developing countries. As a small island developing state, the Kingdom of Tonga attaches great importance to the principle of the common heritage of mankind. Without it, discussions and engagement regarding the administration and management of the area would be exclusive to the very few countries that can afford to traverse the area. The common heritage of mankind remains a fundamental principle in the management and administration of the area. Its operationalization through the mining code must ensure that the key elements of fairness, sustainability, intergenerational equity, and stewardship are embodied throughout. The role of the ISA in facilitating and coordinating these negotiations through official and other contemporary means has been instrumental in providing the necessary platform where all countries and stakeholders can engage. As we all know, Part 11 embodies the evolutionary approach as it relates to the establishment and functioning of the organs and subsidiary bodies of the authority in accordance with the annex of the Convention. The participation and engagement of all parties are fundamental to ensuring the strengthening of the rule of law in the area and ensuring that the authority, its rules and regulations are developed to achieve what was envisioned by the drafters, but adapted to ensure it applies to the present. The unique role and mandate of the authority allows it to contribute to all goals of the 2030 agenda, including the rule of law, promoting gender equality, access to capacity building, and transfer of marine technology and partnership. To conclude, strengthening the rule of law, particularly as it relates to the area, is only possible with the existence of the authority and the involvement of all stakeholders. We must ensure a robust and future-proof mining code is in place for the sustainable management of the area beyond 2030. Thank you.
I thank the Honourable Minister very much for her statement, and it is now a pleasure for me to invite the Honourable Bjørnar Selnes Skien. I hope that's close. The Minister of Fisheries and Ocean Policy of Norway to make a statement.
That was really close, Leader. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by expressing my gratitude for the opportunity to participate at this side event. And I also want to thank the former speakers for their opening remarks and my colleague, the Honourable Fekita Oikamanu, for her address. In April, the UN General Assembly marked the 40th anniversary of the adoption of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. The convention, often referred to as the Constitution of the Oceans, is one of the most significant multilateral instruments ever created. It represents a milestone for international cooperation and governance. As the Constitution of the Oceans, the Convention sets out the legal framework within which all activities in the oceans and seas must be carried out. It states that the area and its resources are the common heritage of mankind. In other words, the area and its resources belongs to us all, and any activity there must be carried out for the benefit of mankind as a whole. Activities in the area are organized and controlled by the International Seabed Authority. Designing an effective system to govern common heritage resources is no easy task, I believe. But the authority has proven itself to be an effective organ for the collective sustainable management of the marine minerals in the area. We are convinced that the authority's success is closely tied to the success of UNCLOS and the institutional framework it established. Population growth, increased standards of living, and the green transition will increase the global demand for minerals and metals. The deep ocean floor contains minerals that are useful for renewable energy technologies and may contribute to the transition to a low-carbon society. Consequently, there is an increasing interest among states, industry, and other stakeholders for extracting deep-sea minerals resources in the area. The authority has already established regulations for the exploration for these resources. Now, the authority is finalizing the regulatory framework necessary for exploitation activities. As a coastal state, a sea nation, and an experienced resource manager on our own continental shelf, Norway has taken an active role in these negotiations. Norway's goal is to make the management of these resources knowledge-based and to the best of mankind. The regulations must be based on robust environmental principle and the ecosystem approach. Norway is also working to achieve a strict yet functional enforcement and inspection regime to ensure compliance. In addition, we must ensure that everyone can benefit from these developments. The Convention is clear. Because these resources are the heritage of all of mankind, no country should be left behind. Norway strongly supports cooperation and the capacity-building measures initiated by the authority to make it possible for all state parties to utilize their rights and opportunities under UNCLOS. It is also important to ensure a high level of credibility of the authority and the entire institutional regime under UNCLOS. Open, transparent, and inclusive discussions with input from civil society, contractors, and other relevant non-governmental stakeholders will continue to be important as we progress. I want to round off by reaffirming that Norway remains a dedicated supporter of the authority's work under its UNCLOS mandate. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Minister, for your statement. And the last speaker in this segment, I'm really delighted to introduce Her Excellency Ms. Fatou Bintou Raful Correa, the Ambassador of Senegal to Portugal.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank the Secretariat of the International Seabed Authority for organizing this key event and having Senegal involved. My delegation stresses the relevance of this panel theme, strengthening the rule of law in the oceans, to ensure the sustainable management of the area and its resources for the benefit of mankind, which demonstrate once again the authority's willingness to focus on the protection of the marine environment. Dear participants, there are indeed several mechanisms and organizations dedicated to the conservation and sustainable use of marine resources. However, very few are presently dedicated to the sustainable management and governance of marine areas beyond national jurisdictions. These areas are subject to increasing pressures due to intense human activity, overexploitation of fishery resources, destruction of seabed habitat, and pollution of the marine environment, to name a few. Today, the issue of exploitation of genetic resources in areas beyond the jurisdiction of states is a pressing one. This issue requires a comprehensive legal framework in order to protect the marine environment. To this respect, my delegation reiterates its commitment to the exploitation of mineral resources of the seabed for the benefit of all humankind. Because of the growing threats affecting the zone, its biodiversity, and its mineral resources, the United Nations General Assembly has decided to convene an intergovernmental conference to elaborate an international legally binding instrument relating to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, on the conservation and sustainable use of marine biological diversity of areas beyond national jurisdictions. As established by the Montego Bay Convention, the International Seabed Authority is today the only body mandated to authorize the exploration of seabed mineral resources by state parties. This is an opportunity to recall the crucial role of the International Seabed Authority and its council in elaborating norms and guidelines for a reasonable and sustainable exploitation of the resources within the area beyond national jurisdiction of states to the benefit of all countries. Therefore, a more comprehensive legal framework must emerge to ensure sustainable exploitation of the mineral resources within the area. In this regard, my delegation once again invites this authority for its continuous efforts, especially for taking developing countries' concern into account. Dear participants, the United Nations General Assembly resolution required regional fishery management organizations to take specific measures to regulate deep sea fishery in the high seas, including by closing areas to so-called activity, until conservation and management measures are established to prevent significant adverse impacts on vulnerable marine ecosystems. To be effective, these regional initiatives should work with each other, but also with the mandated international organization, in particular, the International Maritime Organization and the International Seabed Authority. As far as is concerned, and to conclude, as far as Senegal is concerned, it's fundamental to improve implementation of existing regulations in order to allow a sustainable management of maritime resources and to better protect the marine environment for the benefit of humanity. This can only be done if regional and international cooperation work hand in hand. Thank you for your kind attention.
I thank the Ambassador of Senegal for her statement. Thank you very much. Well, we've reached the end of the first segment. I would particularly like to thank all distinguished panelists for sticking so well to time. We are right on time. And I'm sorry to rush everyone, but now I have to request you kindly, please, to move to the front row and switch places with the next round of panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary. Good luck.
Thank you so much. Yes. Okay, great. I think we're just about ready. So it's now my distinct pleasure to introduce Mr. François Houllier, the president of IFREMER. IFREMER is one of the institutions that probably has been exploring the deep sea the longest, maybe, but extensive deep sea exploration work around the world for many, many decades, and the quality of IFREMER's work is really, I would say, among the best in the world. And really is a pleasure to have you here, Mr. Houllier, please.
Thank you for the introduction, Mr. General Secretary. Good afternoon to all of you. At IFREMER, our research our innovation, our expertise aim at three things. First, protecting and restoring the ocean. Second, responsibly and sustainably exploiting its resources, be they living resources or physical resources. And third, that sharing marine knowledge and data to create new opportunities for economic growth that respects the marine environment. And definitely our deep sea research is and must be at the crossroads of these three main goals. I would like to maybe have 3 points. The first is about the need for deep sea research. You all know that deep sea represents more than half of the surface of our planet, and we are learning these days that our future climate is also linked to changes in deep sea environment. You probably also know that it may be that life was born there, and that deep sea harbors forms of life that are distinct from those found in continental ecosystems. And a few decades ago, the discovery of hydrothermal vents has been a major ecological breakthrough. Not only did it reveal the existence of hundreds of species, new species, but it also made it possible to discover a previously unknown biological process, the chemosynthesis. We also know that deep sea resources are enormous and diverse, and they are a reservoir of potential solutions for humanity. So scientific knowledge of the deep sea is thus critical, all the more because we can't manage what we can't measure, and we can't protect what we don't know and don't understand. But still, we have to acknowledge that little is known, and deep sea remains very difficult to access. As said by a French ambassador for the poles and the ocean, this is the reason why France has included an axis devoted to deep sea exploration in France 2030. And also because deep sea is a cold world with no light and subject to extreme pressure, it is important to further develop technologies for deep sea exploration. As probably you know, our new AUV underwater vehicle, which will go to 6,000 meters with embarked intelligence, will conduct its first scientific cruise within a few weeks on the French contract in the mid-Atlantic ridge. And we hope and expect that such technological innovations will help accelerating and scaling up deep sea knowledge. So the first key role of deep sea research is to fill the knowledge gap about these out-of-sight and hard-to-reach ecosystems, with the aim to gather enough reliable scientific data and information on deep sea ecosystems, resources, biodiversity and services, always as on their resilience to different types of disturbances, in order to inform the decision on the principle and conditions of their conservation and possible exploitation. The second point I wanted to make is about ISA contribution in this context. We have been, as you said, exploring the area for decades, and we have 2 exploration contracts with ISA. The first on polymetallic nodules in the Clarion-Clipperton zone, and the second on sulfide mines on the mid-Atlantic ridge. As these contracts aim at characterizing the geological resources and the ecological state of these areas, they contribute to advancing the global understanding and knowledge of the deep sea ecosystems. In addition, in these contracts, we also conduct more basic research to understand the processes by which mineral resources are formed, as well as the biodiversity and functioning of the associated ecosystems. So that deep sea research and exploration that is undertaken in the area acts as a catalyst for advancing scientific knowledge for the benefit of mankind. The third point I wanted to underline is about cooperation. The deep sea scientific community, and I must say so, is still fairly small as compared to the vastness of these environments and to the size of scientific community in better known domains. So that international scientific cooperation across disciplines, organizations, and countries is thus critical. May take 3 examples very briefly. First, we are very proud at IFREMER that one of our scientists, female scientist, Daniela Zeppeli, led the organization of the Deep Sea Biology Symposium that was held last year in Brest, in which gathered more than 600 participants from the international scientific community. Such events are critical and essential for sharing the current state of knowledge on deep sea and for federating international scientific teams. But as a comparison, having a background in agricultural sciences and plant sciences, I should tell you that last week in Belfast, the annual International Conference on Arabidopsis Research, this very small plant, gathered about 1,000 scientists. So our community is still very small, and that's to be strengthened. The The second impact I wanted to mention is that the Mining Impact Project, to which we are a partner, along with 31 other partners from 10 countries, is another good example of cooperation to accelerate scientific effort towards a better understanding of the ecological impacts of deep sea mining. So we are glad to participate to such a shared project, and I think this is critical. This is a project about the impacts of an industrial test to harvest manganese nodules in the Clarion-Clipperton zone, but the project will also further help developing study on the regional connectivity of species in deep sea and their resilience to impacts, and on the integrated effects of human activities on ecosystem functions, such as the benthic food web and the biogeochemical processes. And if I had more time, but I will stop here, I would have told you about citizen science approaches that we develop, because we feel that the research that we do on the deep sea should not only be international in terms of cooperation, but should also reach the citizens. And so I invite all of you who are interested to browse the web and look at what our project, which is called Deep Sea Spy, which provides an opportunity for students, scholars, pupils, and also adults to learn more about the species and the biodiversity that you'll find on the deep sea floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that very interesting statement. And also, I just wanted to acknowledge and thank IFREMER for sponsoring a scientific fellowship with ISA. And I say that at this moment as I hand over to our next speaker from India, because I'm very pleased that that fellowship was awarded to a student from India, a lady from India, who will be conducting very highly specialized but really very, very interesting research on how artificial intelligence can contribute to deep sea science. And with that, it's my sincere pleasure to hand over to Dr. Ravichandran, the Secretary of the Ministry of Earth Sciences in India. And again, India is a country that has been conducting deep sea exploration and developing deep sea exploration technology for decades, very much unknown to the general community, but really a long-standing and commendable program, and we're very interested to hear from the Ministry of Earth Sciences.
Thank you, Secretary General, and very good afternoon to all of you. It is great pleasure to be here and the part of this panelist to discuss about the science-based solution for the seabed mining and other activities. As you all know that India was recognized as a pioneer investor in 1980s and allotted a site in Central Indian Ocean for carrying out developmental work, for exploration and survey of polymetallic nodules, and also attached with the science components to find out the new insights. India undertook extensive survey of allotted area and identified potential regions with nodal abundance of interest. The extensive data collected during the various survey is available to other countries, and also it has brought out many interesting new insights in this deep sea research. It is imperative to translate these data to information, knowledge, and science-based solution for the policy framework. Apart from extensive survey and environmental impact studies, deep sea technology development work and trials at sea were conducted in development of integrated mining system by India. Still, the work is going on, and it is in an advanced stage. India has been planning stage-level mining trials, and necessary safeguards and studies have been undertaken to ensure that actions are in conformity with the laid-down guidelines of ISA and environmental impact statement submitted by various stakeholders. India had also undertaken training on deep-sea mining for the candidates from various developing countries, and these efforts as part of capacity building and education have necessary impact in benefiting larger members of the community. India is actively involved in ISA in formulating PM1 exploration code such that efforts of deep-sea mining does not leave any irreversible environmental impact on the oceans, which have no defining boundaries, and the actions are sustainable. Pursuant to the grant of hydrothermal exploration license, India undertook an extensive exploration campaign in the region, engaging latest technologies and systematic water column studies using state-of-the-art instruments were undertaken, thus locating many of the potential plume signatures. Integrated bathymetric and geological studies in PER identified many of the potential locations in that area. Of course, many new insights have already brought out using available observations in terms of scientific publications in all areas of science, especially biology and geology. Having located many potential activity in the form of plumes and other many focused area, I think now it is our endeavor to find out active and inactive winds of the mineralization using state-of-the-art technology. For this, India has launched very important deep ocean mission as part of blue economy policy, around $500 million, to speed up many of these ocean-related activities. It consists of science and technology with the 6 verticals. Number 1, development of technology for deep sea mining, underwater vehicles, and underwater robotics. Number 2, technological innovation for exploration and conservation of deep sea biodiversity. Number 3, deep ocean survey and exploration. And number 4, advanced marine ocean station for ocean biology-related studies, including capacity building. And 5th one is energy and freshwater from the ocean. And the last one is the development of ocean climate advisory services. So all these 6 verticals are already started from last year, and the deep ocean mission is essentially to understand the known and unknown about the deep sea physical, chemical, and biological process where the mining may take place. It is also envisaged to study and document its impact of mining using observations, understanding, modeling, and to provide policy decision and ensure that deep sea mining activities are effectively managed to minimize the impact to the environment. It is also require global collaboration among the scientific community working in this field and share the knowledge for benefit of our one ocean. As a pioneer investor, India stands committed to UNCLOS and harness the ocean resources in an environmentally sustainable manner, ensuring biodiversity intact. Advanced ocean research, science and technology, and innovations are imperative to achieve sustainable development, management, and goals and utilization of ocean resources for all humanity. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ravichandra. Now, our next speaker is Ms. Claire Joly, the head of unit of the Directorate for Science, Technology and Innovation at the OECD. Claire, please, it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Secretary General. Excellencies, distinguished participants, thanks for this opportunity to share some OECD perspectives on the opportunities to advancing deep sea research and science. I have really 2 main points to share. The first one is that we are seeing a growing political recognition of the need to invest in science and ocean observing systems. The theme of this UN conference itself is calling for scaling up ocean action based on science and innovation. In terms of ocean exploration, as we heard already, we know much more today about the ocean seafloor, the water column, the currents and biochemistry of the ocean as compared to just 5 years ago. This is important knowledge that we need as we consider the big picture of accelerating climate change and biodiversity loss, and the momentum has to continue. As we are building new OECD indicators on ocean science and innovation, we are aware of the many different scientific communities that are working on the deep sea right now, exploring, mapping, modeling, cataloging species, and creating taxonomies for new discoveries. Their work and results on the biological richness of the deep sea in particular will become even more essential. But there is still a strong asymmetry in knowledge between our understanding of the seabed in exclusive economic zones that are themselves not well known, and in the area beyond national jurisdiction, which covers, as it was said by our colleague from IFREMER, more than 50% of the world's seabed. The good news is that some projects to share information will be helping, such as the Seabed 2030 project, but also the Sustainable Seabed Knowledge Initiative launched this year by our colleagues from the International Seabed Authority to provide access to data on hundreds of new species found in the area, but also the recent agreement between ISA and the International Hydrographic Organization to make more seabed data available to researchers. There are also new capacity building projects announced throughout this conference from the Commonwealth and other actors. Still, as the French poet Rabelais wrote, science without conscience is only ruin of the soul. Science sans conscience n'est que ruine de l'âme. It means that beyond exploration, science should actually underpin decisions concerning our uses of the ocean to prevent and mitigate damages and avoid blatant abuse of marine natural resources. This principle of using science to guide us is of course promoted by the UN Decade on Ocean Science. So my second point is that we should not ignore the toolbox that exists to promote the conservation and sustainable uses of the ocean by responsible governments. The OECD tracks a range of regulatory and economic instruments from mandatory environmental impact assessments to codes of conduct and adherence to the polluters pay principle. Some of these instruments generate and help to mobilize finance for the ocean. As an example, taxes relevant to ocean sustainability generated at least $4 billion in 2018, with taxes on ocean-related pollution, transport, and energy generating the most revenues. As we learn from some countries like Iceland, effective policy mixes supported by science can address the different pressures on the ocean and foster better behaviors. However, the reality is that we are still lacking, in many cases, effective monitoring of what happens at sea and enforcement mechanisms. This is also true for some established sectors of the ocean economy, with problems that we are all aware of, from depleting fish stocks, ghost fishing gears, which represent an important source of marine pollution, as shown also by the recent OECD report on the global plastics outlook, and oil pollution, as demonstrated by the looming crisis we are seeing off the west of the coast of Yemen. So we do have well-known precedents that need to guide decisions concerning the fate of the high seas. So in this complex environment, we are seeing some actors, like the International Seabed Authority, actually taking upfront some of these challenges. And the OECD will really continue developing evidence to help policymakers and other stakeholders take stock of these many challenges, and recalling again and again the importance of having sustained science program and strong ocean observing systems to underpin decisions. As we launch a new OECD foresight exercise called the Ocean Economy in 2045, we look forward to work with many of you as we all aim for a sustainable ocean economy. So with this, I really thank you for your attention.
I thank you very much, and thank you for mentioning our two projects, the Area 2030 project and SKI. Well, colleagues, we were to have been joined by the Associate Deputy Minister of Fisheries and Oceans of Canada. Unfortunately, I'm told he's indisposed, so Richard Vaughan, his advisor, has kindly stepped in to deliver his remarks. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Secretary General, for having us here today and hosting this event. I'm honored to represent my department, Fisheries and Oceans Canada, in this very important discussion. I know that our minister and leaders place a lot of importance on the work that is being done under the International Seabed Authority and in fostering partnerships and supporting common goals. Canada is engaged in the work of the ISA as part of our responsibilities as party to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. Our goal is to ensure that the exploitation regulations include strong environmental protections that are based on science and ensure the effective protection of the marine environment. We know that this is also the objective of many of the stakeholders here and also those who are involved in the seabed mining conversation worldwide. So it should go without saying that strategic partnerships across all sectors are critical to ensure the stewardship of the deep seabed and its resources for all of humankind. It's been a busy time for ISA members with the 2-year trigger rule invoked in July 2021. As a result, Canada and other ISA Council members have increased the urgency of work on the development of robust exploitation regulations. I know firsthand how hard everyone has been working at these meetings. With this in mind, Canada looks forward to participating in the upcoming July 2022 session to keep up this great work with our partners. In between sessions, we are continuing intersessional work to coordinate and discuss positions with other member states. At the same time, we've continued to engage with non-governmental organizations to address concerns, identify gaps, and propose solutions. Canada remains committed to building connections and working with NGOs throughout this entire process. Canada's work is guided by the High-Level Panel for a Sustainable Ocean Economy, which now represents 17 world leaders with the recently welcomed addition of the United Kingdom. These world leaders have supported the 2030 outcome that sufficient knowledge and regulations must be in place so that any activity related to seabed mining is informed by science and ecologically sustainable. But we also need to focus more on the immediate term, and a unified approach will be key to develop adequate scientific knowledge on the sensitivity of these ecosystems and development of a circular economy to reduce demand and help mitigate risks. We need to ensure that regulations provide effective protection of marine environments while also securing compliance via a robust inspection mechanism and ensure that the seabed mineral activities within and beyond national jurisdiction comply with environmental standards. Further, recently released, the G7 Environment Ministers' communiqué outlined that the enhancement of knowledge on the deep sea, its unique ecosystems, and the impacts of possible deep sea mining is paramount, with a particular focus on developing effective environmental standards as binding elements in future permitting processes. These standards should be based on science, as well as requiring that regional environmental management plans are in place before exploitation licenses are granted in regions. So, we have an outline of what needs to be done. It's a lot of work, but following this direction from our leaders cannot be done without fostering robust engagement and involvement with stakeholders. This is why Canada will continue to advocate for increased transparency, access to information, and public participation at the ISA. It is crucial that we work in tandem to develop strong mining exploitation regulations that protect the marine environment and ensure that the activities in the area are carried out for the benefit of humankind as a whole, and that the benefits of such activities are shared equitably. In summary, we know that finding the best solutions to these challenges will require strong partnerships and action through extensive coordination. We look forward to continued collaboration across all governments and stakeholders involved to ensure proper stewardship of the seabed and its resources for all of humankind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we very much welcome and acknowledge the enormous contribution that Canada continues to make to the work of ISA. Well, now the clock is ticking, but now it is my great pleasure to move to one of the organizations that we enjoy very much to collaborate with, and that is the UN Global Compact, and to introduce Mr. Sture Henriksson, who is the Special Advisor for Oceans for the UN Global Compact. Sture, it's a pleasure to see you here, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Michael, and thanks for the invitation to this interactive dialogue. So, if you allow me, I'd like to start with an observation, which is that we are very often talking about solutions, green solutions in the transition that we are facing. But I think we need to talk more about green dilemmas. Because I think that, or trilemmas for that matter, because I think that there are very few areas where there are solutions which do not carry sort of collateral costs. And I think in this area, I think this is one of the most sensitive discussions that we have now. And we need to be facts-based, we need to be evidence-based, and we need to see ocean from a holistic perspective. Because the discussion about seabed mining is not only a discussion about life below water, it's a discussion about the ocean, people, prosperity, and also basically peace nexus. So this is, this places, I think, ESA and the seabed mining topic at the very core of the climate-nature people nexus. And I'd like to say that UN Global Compact doesn't have sort of a formal position on this, whether if, when, how, or where to explore and exploit the seabed resources, but we do acknowledge and support the very important role of ESA and the challenging task that you have in endeavoring to develop both a science-based regulatory framework, seeking to both protect ocean health and marine biodiversity, while concurrently exploring the potential for seabed resources to contribute to soaring demand for critical metals and rare earth elements needed to decarbonize our societies. And adding to this complex and complicated balancing act is the fact that ISA is pioneering a regulatory framework designed for an industry which is yet to be developed, which is yet in a very nascent stage. And unlike virtually all other areas where industry has matured and developed ahead of regulations. And last but not least, the regulatory framework also that you're developing also entails pioneering benefit sharing arrangements. That is, provisions designed to ensure that revenues from industrial activities in the area are also benefiting non-participating, landlocked, and less developed countries. So this means that ESA is not only dealing with the environmental, regulatory, and industrial frontiers of deep sea mining. It is as much dealing with the frontiers of a complex and unique international regime for managing our most important global common in a sustainable and equitable manner. And this it cannot do on its own. So it needs an integrated approach. It needs business to step up and come forward. And of course, that is at the very core of the UN Global Compact. We are the private sector arm, if you wish, of the UN, and we have 16,000 plus member companies and 4,000 civic society organizations. So we are cooperating with ESA in this. We're very happy. And I'd like to say that ESA both deserves and needs to be supported and underpinned by multi-stakeholder participation in this, to ensure that they have the political mandate and backing, to ensure that we have a precautionary approach based on best available scientific knowledge, to ensure that we have the full commitment of responsible industrial partners, and to ensure that we unlock the potential for economic growth and prosperity in the global south and for women participation, and also that we all contribute to improving ocean literacy. So we really understand what we are talking about, because the ocean itself is it's poorly managed, it's weakly regulated in many areas, and it's little understood, and that we have to do something about. And this ESA cannot do alone, and this is why it's so important that we have industrial partnerships as we are trying to foster in the UN Global Compact. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sturla. And now, last but by no means least, it's really a great pleasure to introduce, again for the second time today, Alex Herman from the Cook Islands, who is the Seabed Minerals Commissioner of the Cook Islands. Alex, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, kia orana, and warm Pacific greetings to you all from the Cook Islands on behalf of our Prime Minister, the Honourable Mark Brown. In the Cook Islands, our ocean makes up 99.99% of our country. We truly are an ocean state. As people of the ocean, we care for our marae moana. We take our role and responsibilities as ocean stewards very seriously. When we speak of stewardship, it is through the lens of centuries of mana tiaki, of upholding our environmental, social, cultural, and traditional values. We all recognize the enormous potential of our ocean's natural resources to meet our sustainable development goals, but only if our ocean is restored and maintained to be healthy and productive. Now, in order to do that, we must act collectively through our shared values of stewardship. Strategic partnerships are at the heart of the work of the International Seabed Authority. The partnerships that the authority has built up over the years are vast, spanning national, sub-regional, regional, and international actors. I commend the Secretary General and the authority for this. It is no easy feat and has contributed towards not only SDG 14, but also links into 11 other SDGs in advancing the 2030 agenda. One strategic partnership example I wish to speak to is the Abyssal Initiative for Blue Growth, supported by the Authority, UNDESA, Norway, SPC, SPREP, and the Pacific Islands Forum, to name a few. This initiative was aimed at strengthening the capacities of the Pacific sponsoring states, the Cook Islands, Kiribati, Nauru, and the Kingdom of Tonga, and included workshops on the roles and responsibilities of sponsoring states, marine scientific research, and deep seabed environmental management and monitoring. The Abyssal Initiative is a success story for capacity building that is purposefully aligned to the actual needs of states, and that is in large part due to the strategic partners involved. We look forward to phase 2 of this critical project. To give a national example, the Cook Islands is presently engaged in a program to explore the potential of our seabed mineral resources. As with others, the global COVID pandemic has showed us that in order to meet our development aspirations, we must diversify our economy away from our sole dependence on tourism. We recently completed a 16-month-long, robust and transparent exploration licensing process, where we issued 3 exploration licenses to companies who understand and accept our Cook Islands values and aspirations for our marae moana. I wish to reiterate that the Cook Islands has made it clear we are only allowing exploration activities, and the onus remains on the license holders to demonstrate to us that they can conduct their commercial activities without causing serious harm to our marine environment. Again, critical to the success of our exploration licensing process were the strategic partners we brought on board who shared their technical expertise to enable us to assess the technical, environmental, legal, financial, and social considerations involved in the application process. These partners included the Authority, Commonwealth Secretariat, SPC, Australia, New Zealand, NIWA, and the American Bureau of Shipping. Looking then at how we can leverage strategic partnerships to support the ISA's unique mandate, our humble view is that we need to continue to evolve and build upon the successes of existing strategic partnerships and also explore new strategic arrangements. This requires collective action at multiple levels, bringing together all our stakeholders, our member states, governments, international and regional organizations, academic institutions, civil society, industry, and our public. Everyone agrees we need an integrated whole-of-society approach, and it is our hope that at the second United Nations conference will give us the impetus to maintain progress on this, including through strategic partnerships. Capacity building projects like the Abyssal Initiative can and should be scaled up. We can share our lessons learned with other SIDS, LDCs, and LLDCs to collectively lift our capabilities. There are so many untapped possibilities, and that is the exciting part. This may even include unlikely strategic alliances and partners, such as those who, despite sharing the same overarching values, might have different positions. In this regard, I point to the Pacific as a guide on the way forward. Our Pacific leaders have long held a commitment to working together to protect our Pacific Ocean in a manner that resonates with our unique vulnerabilities, our cultures and traditions, and our social, economic, and environmental landscape. As part of the Blue Pacific continent, the Cook Islands understands and appreciates the power of Talanoa and the sharing of and respect for divergent views. Talanoa is a nuanced and powerful space to listen and to be heard. Indeed, Talanoa values helped shape UNCLOS and the adoption of SDG 14, and can be a powerful force for positive global change, helping to build upon and to create new, innovative strategic partnerships. It is difficult work, but the example of the Pacific uniting as one ocean people, moving forward as a collective, has proven time and again that we can resolve the most complex issues through open and frank discussions, and always with respect and sound appreciation of our differences, achieving positive outcomes which benefit us all. And so, to that end, we look to the authority and member states to lead the way, and together with our stakeholders and strategic partners to take action for the sustainability of our ocean for the betterment of humankind. Me taki mātai kia manuia.
Thank you very much, Alex. Well, unfortunately, we are well into the red zone, and so we have to wrap up. I would like to thank you all for coming to this event and listening to these excellent, outstanding speakers. I hope that this has been enlightening and that you have learnt something about the authority's mandate to protect the environment, to manage access to resources, to generate knowledge of the deep seabed and its resources and its biodiversity, and to share that knowledge and access to the deep seabed. I would like to invite you all to join us now in side event room 2 to hear more about our Sustainable Seabed Knowledge Initiative. And with that, I thank all the panelists, I thank all of you for coming, and we shall see each other again in the next few days. Thank you.